Picking it up, so I'm not complaining.
Yeah, it's easier.
No.
We're live.
Hello, everybody. We are on the air with our special live election show. This is us for real. If we actually said an interesting word right now, it would be on the air, but we don't do that sort of thing. Avi Meyers here, ordinarily the host of the Northtown News Magazine. I want to introduce you to my co-host, Jim Nally, who's just educating me which camera I should be looking into. Hey, Jim.
Good morning, Avi. Good morning, everyone.
And we've got a very interesting lineup of guests today. We've got 5 different guests. We've got, in chronological order, we've got Joseph Berios, who's running for assessor of Cook County, calling in. We've got, followed by independent candidate for Governor Scott Lee Cohen. We've got Cook County Commissioner Larry Suffredin. We have Metropolitan Water Reclamation District Commissioner running for election, Mariyan Spyropoulos, and congressional candidate Joel Pollack. So, and I want to let all of you know that Jewish Chicago, which I publish in my spare time, is now available, free, all over the city, everywhere from the south and south of the Loop and just west of the Loop, all the way up to Highland Park and that general area. It's out, it's in force, it's already gone in certain places. You can catch it online at, if you go first of all to the regular show website, www.ntnm.org for our regular Northtown News Magazine show, or go to www.aviworld.com, you'll be able to get a copy of Jewish Chicago. I want to thank my entire, well, actually, we've got more than one person. Sonny Hersh, this is a Sonny Hersh production, and happy birthday, Jamie. How you doing? We hope everything's cool. And that's Jamie is Sonny's daughter, and Keith McDonald, who is totally invaluable, and we want to thank all the people of KNTV for their help. So, Jim, let's talk about the election a little bit.
Well, I think this is going to be a very interesting election season, as they always are. I really like the lineup of guests we have today, Avi, because we've got every level of government covered. We've got county candidates, water reclamation, statewide candidates, and federal candidates. So I think it's going to be a very educational hour here and cover a lot of ground and a lot of issues from local all the way up to national.
And we've got Republicans, Democrats, and an independent.
Pretty much covers the waterfront.
Yeah. Well, I always like to tell people that I do not subscribe to any party. I'm looking for the best person.
Well, we've got an election, I think, where a lot of people are doing that. I think if I've been talking to people, and a number of people have told me that in the past where they just kind of uniformly voted one party or the other, people are very particular now, and they really want to hear where people are on issues such as taxes, the size of government, obviously creating jobs and the economy is extremely important right now. And I think it's given candidates who might not get a hearing from certain groups of people the opportunity to present their ideas to them, and if people like the ideas, gain some support there.
I actually think that's why Scott Lee Cohen won in the primary, because he talked about the issues that people really were looking at, like the economy and trying to get jobs for people, and he also covered the entire state.
Well, I think what most people are concerned about is jobs. If people have a job, they're concerned, are they going to continue to have a job, or how secure their employment is? And there are a lot of people out there who've lost their jobs, who've not been able to either find another job at all or a comparable job in terms of being compensated and the type of work that they would like to do as a career.
Yeah, a lot of people are working shorter hours. One of the problems with the employment figures right now is that when somebody's out of the workforce for 6 months, they no longer count as being unemployed. So that 9.6% figure is actually a bit higher than that.
Well, I think a lot of people are looking at the federal stimulus money and saying, I'm not seeing anything in my world that is being affected by it. Obviously the economists are all saying this has been very important, and I believe it was, to stabilize the financial system. But now we're at a point where people are saying, but what's it doing in terms of my being able to find a job, or my kids being able to find work, or how's it benefiting the education system? Now we've got a situation where all levels of government are in financial distress, and people are really starting to wonder, where is all that money, and why isn't it helping with these issues as well?
Well, I think it was important to do the stimulus. I don't know that it was done 100% correctly. Part of the problem is that 40% of the stimulus, and most people don't realize that, came in the form of tax rebates and reductions in payroll taxes, which is something you don't see. And did it really make a difference? People put the money in the bank, which is a good thing, But for all the money that was spent, you didn't get that bang for the buck. If you had put the money into infrastructure, and Lord knows that there are so many infrastructure projects needed throughout the country, bridges that are getting old, things that need to be rebuilt, that would have made a difference. A lot of it still hasn't been spent yet.
Well, I think that's the interesting thing, that maybe a little less than half of the money has actually been spent up till now. So that money is still out there, and it's been allocated, and I think that a lot of what's going to come out of this election will be sending a message on how people think that money ought to be handled.
No, there's no question. It's having a tremendous effect on everything. People don't really realize what, people are saying, oh, we need to spend for this, spend for that, or we need this program, that program. This state is so far behind. I mean, you're talking about the possibility that people's pensions may not get paid. You're talking about everything going belly up. Certain counties in California have already declared bankruptcy. You could have a situation like this here. I'm not trying to panic anybody, but you know what? You got to stop right now, play it careful. You've got to cut government spending. I'm not saying what to cut. I'm not an expert on that, but you certainly have to cut down on what you're doing. You probably do have to raise taxes a little bit. Not a popular thing to do, especially now, but whatever it is, you've got to start getting the numbers moving in the other direction. Whatever it is, you've got to, the main difference between our situation right now and the Depression in the 1930s is right now we've got $1 trillion in debt to Asian countries. And in the 1930s, we didn't owe anything to anybody. And that's a big problem.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a very fine balance where you have to incur this debt to stimulate things, but at a certain point you've got to start winnowing that debt back down, or you're going to be in a position where you're in the hole and have no way out.
Well, let's start talking about, this seems to be looking more and more, to a certain extent it looks Republican, but this is a very Democratic state. So the fact is that you've got a big Senate battle. We don't have a guest for that, between Kirk and Janulius. And you would think ordinarily everything looks like it's going to go Republican throughout the nation. And you've got both of them, as far as I'm concerned, to pretty well disgrace themselves beyond belief. But you've got a situation where Janulius is hanging right in there, and depending on the day, he might even be a point or so ahead of the polls.
Well, I think that goes back to what I was talking about earlier, Avi, is that I think that people are looking at the candidates individually, and they're not necessarily paying as much attention to a party label. They're looking to say, what is this person proposing that I agree with or I disagree with? And they're making their choices based on that, not so much as saying, I'm just going to vote for the party that's out of power to sweep out the party that's in power.
I think the nature of the ballot helps that also. By the way, for those people who don't know, Jim is the leading election lawyer in the state of Illinois. In the old days, even there used to be like a lever you'd pull or a button you'd push or a hole you'd punch that would say Democrat. That doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
But now the nature of the ballot, but still you'd have like all the Democrats on a line or in some sort of, progressive order. That's almost kind of a joke, whatever. But now, sometimes the Republicans on top, sometimes the Democrats on top. There's not a way to go through the list. I mean, you could just go Democrat, 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 but it doesn't really, or Republican, Republican. But most people aren't doing that the way they used to.
Right. There's no straight party voting anymore in Illinois. That was done away with. You probably remember the last time was about 15 years ago, the old Punch 10 campaign.
I do remember the old Punch 10. And in any event, you know what? Our very first guest, who is speaking of Democrats, not just the head of the Democratic Party, commissioner of the Board of Appeals, or Board of Review.
Board of Review.
And somebody that we both happen to like, and I'm going to, is the Democratic candidate for Assessor of Cook County, Joseph Berios. Commissioner, how are you today?
Hi, Jim. How are you?
Commissioner, it's good to have you live this morning. How's the campaign going? And how's the campaign going?
Very good. I'm heading to a church right now where they'll have a couple of thousand people at, and we're going to speak in front of them and talk to them about getting out to vote on Tuesday, November 2nd, and supporting the Democratic Party.
What are you hearing from people, Commissioner, on your travels throughout the county?
Well, you're starting to see a motivation within the minority communities, which is what was needed because of the fact that the numbers, as we see, as everyone can see in the polls, the numbers are very close. So we need to make sure that we get out our Democratic base so that we can win November 2nd across the board from top to bottom.
And what are the issues that people are talking to you about?
Jobs, basically jobs, and how we're going to get the economy rolling again. I don't. Again, I've said, and people have said to me that, it doesn't matter. Barack Obama's been there 2 years. These problems have taken years and years and years to create, and no one person's going to solve the world's problems in 2 years. So, we're telling people that we need to make sure that the Lexi and the governor get reelected, and I'm out there pushing for my campaign as assessor of Cook County and telling them the changes that I want to make in the office to make sure that no one pays more than their fair share of property taxes, and that the assessor's job is to assess properly and to go into all the communities and make sure that the numbers are correct.
Can you speak a little bit about what the assessor actually does? I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what the assessor's role is in the entire property tax process.
Well, the assessor's job basically is, one, to get the numbers correct, because if your assessed valuation on your property is incorrect, you end up paying more property taxes than you should. So it's incumbent on the assessor to do all he can to make sure those numbers are correct. This year alone, 430,000 properties appealed at the Board of Review, which shows you that people are fed up with the system the way it is, and they felt that their assessed valuations were incorrect, and they don't want to pay more in property taxes than they have to. So, we need to go down to that office, make the changes, get more information, as I've been on the campaign trail telling people that we need to get more information into the system so we can make better judgments as to values in different communities. So that's what we need to do, and we can do that by getting information from suburban county assessors that are elected, and by also going out into the different communities and talking to the real estate boards, look at where the foreclosures are, and look what's going on in the different communities that affect values of properties.
Commissioner Avi Meyers here. How are you?
Good.
Pleasure. I want to let people know, by the way, that the commissioner and I did a recent interview together with Scott Sissick, his excellent appointee, that you can all catch on YouTube. And by the way, all of these interviews, as well as this show later today is going to be on YouTube just a few hours after we speak, and previous interviews with Commissioner Berios. And our first one, interestingly enough, has really risen up and is one of the 20 or 25 most watched ones we've done over the past 4 years. What is your feeling for the campaign? How do you feel you're doing?
And their ability to appeal their assessments. So that's one of the reasons we're out there working to make sure that people understand the system and know what their rights are. Everyone who gets an assessment notice should check them, very thoroughly, because if you don't, you'll end up paying more property taxes than you have to if they're incorrect.
And Commissioner, what is it about your experience and background that sets you apart from the other candidates?
Well, the other candidates in actuality haven't had the day-to-day experience of trying to help homeowners throughout Cook County. One of my opponents, every time we go on a debate, all he talks about is, taking contributions. But, in one hand, he's gotten a contribution of $200,000 from one person. Two people gave him $150,000 each. 6 other people gave him $50,000 each. But, he complains about the fact that, we're getting $1,600 contributions from some people. But, he doesn't understand the office. He said all it is an office that needs an administrator. No, you need someone down there that knows what's going on, understands the valuation system, and can look at appraisals, look at income information, and make determinations as to what valuation should put on a particular property. You just don't want someone in there that's not able to work with his staff and talk to his staff and tell him what he expects out of each and every one of them when he just wants to be an administrator. I on the other hand, have said that I will, leave my other job opportunities that I have out there, because I think this is very important, and we need to make sure that the assessor's office is working for each and every taxpayer. And I know for a fact that to straighten out the mess that's down there, it's going to take a full-time guy down there working 24/7 to make sure that the numbers are correct.
One of the things I'd like to point out is that the people who used to work under Claypool at the Park District, whether he fired them or not, they so strongly react negatively to him through their experience. It's unbelievable. And they're going to be lining up to vote for you like there's no tomorrow.
Yes, but, people should look at what Claypool did at the Park District. He brags that he cleaned up the parks and everything, but the other thing that he doesn't talk about, he fired many, many people that were there and then turned around and hired a bunch of his friends. And then he, instituted the fee procedure at all the park districts where every baseball league and everyone wanting to use the facilities had to pay additional costs to use the facilities, when in actuality we're paying for that with our property taxes. So,
People also have the impression that this guy's
bubble hit at the park district because he's instituted these plans.
A lot of people have the impression that he's some sort of crusader, when in fact he was Mayor Daley's two-time chief of staff. He's as politically connected and as much of an insider as anybody around.
No, people have to look at that also because of the fact that, again, look, he was the chief of staff for the mayor of the city of Chicago, but he turns around and says, I don't know what was happening at the Park District. I don't know what was happening at the Board of Education. I don't know what was happening over here. Then what the heck was he doing? He can't call himself an outsider when he was the chief of staff for the mayor of the city of Chicago. And, the mayor, and he was instituting the mayor's program, and he knew what was going on in all the different places. Everyone knew he was going over to the Park District way before anyone else did. So, he was already keeping track of what was going on there. So that when he ended up taking the parking facilities and privatizing them, and in turn, taxpayers ended up paying higher parking fees because it was privatized. But he says he didn't know anything about it. Well, then again, he was the chief of staff. Everybody knew he was going over there. So, what kind of, he's not an independent. He's a total insider. And if you look at his career, the only jobs that he's ever had are government jobs.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, I really look for, one of the things that everybody has always told me about you and people I really respect is that whenever you give your word, you're straightforward and you're good to your word. And I found that too in interviewing you and dealing with you.
Thank you.
Well, Joe, we want to wish you the best of luck in the upcoming days as we get down to Election Day. And certainly, I want to remind people too, there's still time to early vote this coming week. So if they don't want the hassle of getting out to the polling place on November 2nd, all 50 wards in the city of Chicago and all 30 townships and various city halls and village halls throughout the county will be open for early voting as well.
Well, thank you, Jim. Thank you, Avi, for having me. I encourage everyone to come out and vote this election. We need to show our voices this time around because this is a very, very important election for Democrats, and anyone who pays taxes should be involved in this system and come out and vote for me on Election Day. And I promise each and every one of you that I will work day in and day out to make sure that the assessments coming out of the assessor's office are fair and equitable across the board. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. And I want to, Commissioner, if you haven't seen it, I hope everybody picks up Jewish Chicago, in which you are very strongly endorsed. And, if you don't have a copy, I'll make sure you get one.
Yes, I've got a copy. I saw it, and I'm very appreciative that you've shown your support for my candidacy. And I promise that I will not let you down or any of the voters here in Cook County.
Like I said earlier, people I know that I deal with, and even a lot of the so-called independents have always told me that you're good to your word.
Thank you. Have a great day now, guys.
Thank you. Good luck on the campaign trail.
Okay.
I like him.
Yeah, well, I think you said what everybody says about Joe Berios is that what he says is he's always true to his word, and he's just the type of person, that when you talk to him, you can realize that he's going to back up what he says. He's not going to tell you one thing and do a different thing.
No, absolutely. And you know what? It's the more I deal with it, you think he's running the Democratic Party here. That's kind of a big job.
Oh, definitely. He is the first member of a minority group to be elected by his peers as the chair of the party. And, of course, in Cook County, the Democratic Party is quite a formidable organization. I think if you look at what Joe has done, he's really worked his way up. He came from very humble personal beginnings, saw the value of education, got his accounting degree, went into the state legislature, and then now serves on the Board of Review, and is well on his way to becoming the next assessor.
Actually, I didn't know he was an accountant.
Yes. So, and as he says, that office is really, you've got to know your numbers in that office. I mean, that is a very, very technically demanding position. It's not the type of position where you just come in and you're stamping papers all day. What you're doing there is exercising sound discretion and making sure that everybody is treated fairly, and you have to know what you're doing in that office. You have to know what the numbers mean in order for that to take place.
Yeah, actually, well, first of all, no offense, I'm impressed when there's a non-lawyer in government. And it's funny because usually you see those on the Republican side of life more so than the Democratic side.
Yeah, well, I think, again, it gets back, people are looking for qualified individuals, and they're saying, who really knows this particular office? I think that's why people are being very, in some ways being very critical of candidates, but also in terms of being critical in their thinking and saying, I'm just not going to vote for this person until I know what they stand for.
Well, you know what? We are now privileged to have the independent candidate for governor, and I mean really independent in every way, shape, and form. Somebody that we both know. I personally voted for the guy already for lieutenant governor. Good chance I'm going to vote for him again for governor. We're talking about Scott Lee Cohen. How are you, Scott?
Good afternoon, gentlemen. I'm well. How are you?
Thank God, pretty good. Say hi to Jim Nally.
Hi, Jim.
Hello, Scott. How are you?
I'm good, real good. Busy on the campaign trail. We have a short amount of time left.
No, there's no question. Are you? What are you hitting today?
Today is mostly churches on the south and west side, and tonight we have some kind of benefit in Joliet, and then the rest of the week very, very busy.
No, and I imagine there's a lot of demand. I think it's great, the job fairs and the emphasis on jobs and traveling throughout the state. I think you brought a whole excitement to the campaign.
I got to tell you what's really amazing to me is in this cycle, people aren't talking publicly about voting for Scott Lee Cohen. But I got to tell you, when I'm in a one-on-one conversation with people, that's all I hear is they're sick and tired of these career politicians, that I have their support and their vote. And if you look throughout the city, you see my signs in a lot of people's houses. So I think that whatever I'm doing, it's resonating well.
Scott, you were the first candidate to really make jobs the focus here, and now everybody's talking about that. What did you see that made you realize that was really what people were concerned about?
That happened during the primary when I did my first state tour. You're right. I was the original person talking about jobs because that's what the people said to me, that they were afraid. They were losing their jobs. They couldn't find jobs anywhere, so I made that was a platform for my running. It's one of the biggest reasons why I want to be governor, to bring these jobs back.
And you actually, I think what people were impressed with, you did concrete things. You didn't just talk about it. You had these job fairs. And I understand a number of people were successful in landing jobs through your efforts.
I did, and actually I did a lot of things behind the scenes that people don't even know about. During the last campaign, I was very involved with the Illinois Main Street. Illinois had lost the Illinois Main Street franchise, and I was working very hard to get it to a point where it would sustain or bring in more businesses. Unfortunately, that kind of fell by the wayside, but as governor, I will make sure that that's a priority of Baxter Swilley to work on that Main Street program. And really, it's such a vital program for the neighborhoods in Illinois.
And Scott, if you're elected governor, what are the first concrete things you're going to do?
Well, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to clean house and get rid of all these leftover Blagojevich people. It's a mess down there. That's why the state's not running right. Well, it's one of the reasons. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to send out and have a forensic audit done, and we're going to work to implement my zero-based and performance-based budget, because that's a surefire way of saving millions, if not billions, of dollars in wasted money. From there, I'm going to concentrate on what I told the people all along: bringing businesses, manufacturing, and industry back to Illinois. This is something that neither of my opponents have any kind of plan on doing.
Well, they not only don't have a plan, I guess if somebody would have given them enough campaign contributions to try to do something like that, they might have scratched their head and considered it. But the choices in this race are from the Democrat and Republican standpoint, are just horrible. I mean,
They're
you've
dismal.
got bad
They're
and worse.
Very dismal. And, people say that everything happens for a reason. And looking back over the past 2 years, maybe that this was God's plan originally, to have me in line to be governor. Maybe he felt that I was the right choice. The people certainly feel I'm the right choice, and that's why they're voting for me.
No, and you've got a lot more support than people think. And you know what? When you look at numbers in the polls and you see things missing, and people are taking polls without even putting your name in there sometimes.
I know. Well, people, excuse me, especially the Democrats, when they're called for a poll, they're very afraid to say, I'm voting outside of my party. And it's the same thing for the Republicans. But again, we are in uncharted times. These are unprecedented times, and people are doing unprecedented things.
No, very much, and I think we saw that in the primary, where you won election and shocked people, and not to mention other candidates won that people wouldn't have expected ordinarily to even have a shot.
Absolutely, and again, you know what? I had a plan in the primary. I'm the only one out of all the candidates really that has a plan to lower the deficit over 4 years. I'm the only guy that has a plan to bring businesses back to Illinois. It just blows my mind what Senator Brady and Governor Quinn have been doing and how they think.
Well, I think Quinn has shown himself to have proven himself to be totally incapable of running government, period. He's been in politics so long. He was lieutenant governor. He had a bird's eye view, and when he got his opportunity, it just fell by the wayside.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. Both candidates, like you say, have had their chance to show the people what they can do. And, both of them have failed miserably. They have both contributed to running this state into the ground.
Although, actually, you could say maybe that Brady is sort of a gas in some ways.
I'm laughing. I just got an email from somebody. I guess that Governor Quinn is sending a letter to all the Jewish people asking for their support, and it's signed by all the career politicians. You got Ira Silverstein who signed it. You got Jan Szynkowski who signed it. It's you know what? He never has done anything for the Jewish community. He really hasn't done anything for any of the communities in Illinois. And here he is getting all these career politicians to support and endorse him. But let me remind you one thing, because I know we don't have a lot of time. I won the office or the nomination for lieutenant governor without any endorsements from any paper, without any support from senators or state reps. And we won with a landslide victory. And I believe with the support of the people, that's going to happen again in this election.
I hope so, Scott. I want to wish you luck. By the way, Jewish Chicago did endorse you, but of course we're not a major daily paper. And we endorsed you again.
And I appreciate that. I appreciate your trust in me, your support. I promise you, Avi, not only will I not let you down, I will not let down the people of Illinois. I think that this is a last chance for an elected official to show the people that we're not all crooks, we're not all self-consumed, that there are people out there, even who are currently elected, that really believe in this state and moving this state forward.
I want to thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. Scott Lee Cohen, independent candidate for governor. Good luck on the campaign trail.
You guys have a great day, and, like me, you guys work hard.
Go get him, Scott.
Have a great day. Thanks.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye. We are going to switch right away from the state to the county. Scott's a great guy, but we've got my personal favorite commissioner of Cook County out of the 17 various commissioners, and that would be the commissioner of the 13th District, Larry Suffredin. Commissioner Suffredin, how are you doing today? Larry?
Hear me?
We hear you now. How are you doing?
Good. I'm doing fine, Avi. You're there with Jim?
Yes,
Yeah,
good morning, Larry.
Hi, Jim. How are you?
I'm doing great.
By the way, I disagree with just about everything that Scott Lee Cohen just said, and he's going to end up running fourth behind Whitney. But that's another matter, and we'll discuss it in a couple weeks.
Well, we'll see how your prognosticating works. If so, you can give me the lottery numbers, too.
Right. And we're going to the World Series next year, Jim.
Oh.
Yeah, on a bus, maybe.
By the way, I should point out that 2 years ago, Larry was in Jim's chair because Jim was at a family wedding in Boston, and we want to thank you very much, and you did a great job.
Thank you. It was fun.
Anyway, let's talk about the county board. We're on the verge of some very exciting things with some new leadership coming.
Absolutely. Every indication is Tony Preckwinkle is going to have a major, major victory a week from Tuesday. And for the first time in the 8 years I've been on the county board, it'll give me a president who I can work with and whose programs I think will be intended to improve the quality of life for everyone, city or suburbanite, in this county.
No question. One of the things I pointed out in Jewish Chicago is I think this will give you an opportunity to really advance a lot of the plans, because you've got some great ideas and plans for the county.
Well, I hope so. You know, she's been a supporter, an early supporter of the Independent Health Board, and since we spend over $1 billion a year on our healthcare system, it's very important to have someone who's there who wants to work and make sure that it's run in a professional manner to provide the quality of care. I think on the economic development front, she wants to really work with whoever the new mayor of Chicago will be and with the suburban communities to really have a unified plan to draw businesses and jobs into this county. And those are two areas where I think we'll have a lot of fun. I think we'll also see a few new commissioners. We know that John Fritchie is joining us, who's been a great state representative, and that Chuy Garcia, the former state senator, will be joining us. But there are a number of contested races, and there could be some surprises on the county board races on Tuesday.
Larry, I'd like to ask you a question on an intriguing idea you have regarding separating the Forest Preserve commissioners from the Cook County commissioners.
Right.
Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, one of the things that's happened, especially in the last couple of years, is more and more issues have been really putting county commissioners in conflict with their responsibility as Forest Preserve commissioners, and they involve running roads through forest preserves and giving up forest preserve land for other uses. And I have thought for a long time, as have a number of the environmentalists, that as Lake County and DuPage County have already done in Will County, where you separate your forest preserve from your county board, that you may end up with a better quality government on both ends. And so my hope is that a bill that's being sponsored by Senator Don Harmon from Oak Park and Elaine Nekritz from Northbrook will get serious consideration next year, which would separate and allow for a 9-member elected Forest Preserve Board to be responsible for the 68,000 acres of land we have. It's really a small village when you look at the Forest Preserve. It's a $68 million budget when you take the zoo and the garden out of it, and it's a non-home rule unit. And I think that if we had 9 people who run as environmentalists, that we'd see a much better product coming out of the Forest Preserve in terms of extended restoration, maybe purchase of more land, things like that.
Is there any land left in Cook County to purchase?
Actually, surprisingly, there is. Some of it is like golf courses. We recently bought a golf course out near the far western, northwestern corner of Cook County. But there are still some farms within Cook County, and there are still some people who built homes on large tracts of land, and now as families expand or leave people's estates, we're getting them to either give us gifts. We had a wonderful gift from the O'Malley family of over 120 acres in the south area of the county. So, Jim, there is land out there, but it's harder and harder in an urban county like ours.
All the more reason you need it, I would think.
Yep, absolutely.
One of the things that Commissioner Suffredin has done that I really like a lot is he's very much, you've had a lot of seminars about property taxes and various things where you come to people in the various areas within your district. Would you like to talk about it a little bit?
Sure. Well, one of the key things that I think we all have a duty to do is make sure that people only pay their appropriate share of property taxes. And one of the things I've realized that in dealing with the assessor's office and the Board of Review, and that gets into another contested race going on right now in Cook County, you have to be vigilant. And so I've been encouraging and doing seminars and working with the assessor and the Board of Review's office to make sure that people appeal and get to pay only their correct portion of the taxes. And this becomes more and more important as the economy tightens, with the number of foreclosures out there, with people who are facing just tighter budgets in their own personal life. So I think it's one of the keys. I think it's one of the key discussions going on now in this assessor's race. And I think that people are more keenly aware of the impact that the assessments have on their taxes. They're also aware, we have a real problem in Cook County this year in that the tax bills won't come out until November 22nd, and they'll have a due date of December 22nd, which means you'll pay your second installment then, but you'll still have to pay your first installment on February 1st. Whoa. So in less than a 2-month period, you're going to be responsible for 100% of your property taxes, and this is going to cause financial hardship on people. There also is the problem by the bill being so late and coming out on December 22nd instead of September 1st. School districts, park districts, library districts, and municipalities who are dependent upon property taxes are getting their money later, and they're having cash flow problems. So it's an area, Avi, I've always felt that people don't fully understand. I've said to folks that when they design this property tax system in Springfield, it's like the kids' game of whack-a-mole, where you hit the mole on the head, it goes down, but it pops up somewhere else. You're always trying to adjust this property tax system to make it fairer, but there's always another issue.
Wow, I didn't realize I was thinking about my own budget when you just talked about December 22nd.
Sorry that I ruined your holiday New Year's Eve plans. You'll probably have to stay home now and put that money into the kitty to pay the taxes.
Well, you know what? God willing, good things will turn up. First of all, I want to thank you as always. You're always informational. You're always, one thing about you that I found, over the 8 years I've been privileged to know you, is that you're always looking to do good, and you're always looking to make our county a better place.
Well, thanks, Avi. And with the two of you guys, I'm always looking for the Cubs to win the World Series.
Well, that'd be great. And by the way, I came down here today with my Cub hat, and go Cubs. And I want to urge everybody to vote for Larry Suffredin if you live in his district, and even if you don't, you ought to vote for him.
Great.
So the best commissioner in Cook County. We appreciate it very much. We strongly support you. Get your copy of Jewish Chicago, in which we strongly endorse Commissioner Suffredin, and really one of the people that makes me feel good about government every once in a while.
Great, thank you, Avi. Jim, have a great day.
You too, Larry.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. All the best. Well, we're going to switch right now from the county to the Metropolitan Water District of Greater Chicago, and we've got Commissioner Mariyan Spyropoulos on the line. How are you, Commissioner?
Hi, Avi. Thank you for having me on the show.
First of all, thank you. And this is, even though you're presently a commissioner, you were appointed?
Yes, by Governor Quinn in August of 2009.
And you won in the primary, a very difficult primary.
It was tough. There were a lot of good candidates, but I believe the best of them won.
Well, actually, the three people that I voted for actually won, so I'm pleased from that standpoint.
Well, you're one of the informed voters, so I appreciate that confidence.
And well, it's my pleasure. And you know what? One of the things I've learned in talking to you and dealing with you is when you talk about the environment, you are very serious. I mean, you really care about this.
Well, I found that in the last few years that, the environment has sometimes been a trendy word that people have used, but I think at this point people are realizing it's not something that we can take for granted anymore, and we need to be serious about it.
No, absolutely. Tell us a little bit about the Water Reclamation District and what you'd like to accomplish over the term that's coming up.
Well, just to give your viewers a little history, in case they don't know, it's an agency that was created in about the 1880s, and it was created because a lot of waste was going into the Chicago River. The Chicago River was running into Lake Michigan. It was the primary source, as it is now, of people's drinking water, and people were getting sick and dying. The legislature created the Water Reclamation District. One of their first feats was to reverse the flow of the river, And after that, they built the treatment plants. There are 7 filtration plants throughout Cook County, the largest being in Stickney, and they treat 1.5 billion gallons of wastewater per day. So it's not an agency that is responsible for the drinking water, it is the wastewater.
Commissioner, I was with your colleague, President Terry O'Brien, yesterday. He's a very big supporter of yours, first of all.
I appreciate that. He's also doing a great job in his leadership role at the agency.
Now, I have a question. Can you explain for our viewers how the district is impacted with this Asian carp issue that's been in the news lately?
Yes, it's something I'm sure a lot of your viewers have seen in the press lately. These fish were brought into the area a little further south than us to protect fish farms originally, and through flooding and various other natural events, they escaped and start moving their way north. They're also very voracious eaters. So many of them were making their way into Lake Michigan, which we know has a $7 billion fish industry. And the Asian carp could pose a threat if they get in there in very large quantities. And that's sort of the basis of the lawsuit that's being brought against us. And the Water Reclamation District's role is that we control a lot of the land that surrounds various waterways that are responsible for controlling the Asian carp flow. So we're working with various agencies in various states around Lake Michigan. I think the White House has committed about $73 million to this project as well. And what we're looking at is possibly, in an extreme case, people want to look at trying to block the waterways from Lake Michigan. And in the shorter term, some people want to temporarily close some of the locks. The Water Reclamation District's position is that would be detrimental for flooding purposes as well as commerce. But you know, it's under review now. We've got a lot of experts looking at it, and we're cooperating with other government agencies.
I want to mention that, of course, Commissioner Spyropoulos is endorsed by Jewish Chicago. And by the way, even though we haven't quite fixed the web version yet, it's 58 is your number?
No, my punch number is 57.
57, I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
But I want to make sure people punch 57 to vote for you. And, you're very highly thought of. I know, like Jim said, Terry O'Brien thinks the world of you, and we think the world of Terry O'Brien.
Well,
and,
I'm grateful for that. Thank you.
Yeah,
I also got
from
the
everything I've
endorsement
seen,
of the
you've got a
Tribune,
really...
the Sun-Times, the Sierra Club, the Daily Herald. But the most important endorsement will be by the voters on November 2nd.
Well, no question, that's always the big one. And you did extremely well in the primary, and there's every reason to believe that, you're going to do great in November 2nd.
I appreciate that, Avi. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I want to wish luck and success to Commissioner Mariyan Spyropoulos of the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago.
Thank you for having me on the show, and don't forget Punch 57, Mariyan Spyropoulos.
Punch 57. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Well, we've had quite an array of guests so far, Jim.
We've really covered a lot of ground, and I'm glad, because I think that as we're getting so close now to Election Day, people really need to focus and start making their choices. And, it's a little more than a week away.
Yeah, no, it's really time to get it together along those lines. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Sonny Hersh for those great graphics that are up, and who's the actual producer of the show. Happy birthday to his daughter, Jamie. And I want to thank Keith McDonald, whose studio wizardry is unreal. We are here live. I could prove it, but I don't want to use the word. At CAN TV 19, Sunday morning, October 24th. It is presently 11:12 and change. And 4 guests so far. What do you think the turnout's going to be like?
That's going to be an interesting question. I think turnout is definitely going to be down. It's a non-presidential year, so from 2008, where we saw tremendous turnout, and a lot of that was driven obviously by President Obama being a native son of Illinois, not a native son, but an adopted son of Illinois. In off-year elections, traditionally the turnout is lower than in presidential election years. So it will be lower than the presidential year of 2008, but I think it's still an open question in terms of will it be one of the more active off-year elections.
There was such an anticipation for Obama. People were excited that never voted before. and a lot of people feel disappointed. There was even a don't vote campaign in certain places.
Well, I think one of the things that you've seen too is that you know, with the Tea Party movement and some of these situations that have developed pretty much spontaneously around the country, and now have kind of been packaged, and there's a lot of professional politicians getting involved and jumping on the bandwagon. But it did speak to something going on out there with people where they were, you know, very concerned, very, in some cases, angry. The question I always have is, you know, does that translate into going to the polling place? You know, it's easy to sit and scream at your television when you see news stories about issues you don't agree with. Does that motivate people to get up off the sofa and walk over to the polling place on Election Day and do something?
Well, that's a good question, and we do urge people to vote, especially if you're going to vote exactly the way we are, and we're not voting the same way on everything either.
Well, you know, and one thing I do want to say is I want to give credit to the election officials, the State Board of Elections and the Cook County Clerk and the Chicago Board. It is so easy to vote now. You can, there's no fault absentee voting where you can vote by mail. You don't have to give a reason as in the old days if you're going to be out of town or you were ill. You can just request a ballot and it's mailed to your home, and you can vote the ballot in the privacy of your home and mail it back. Early voting. Every ward in the city of Chicago has an early voting site. Village halls and public buildings in suburban Cook. So they are making it about as easy as they possibly can for people to exercise their franchise to vote. So I think it's incumbent on people to respond to that and do it. And then, of course, there's the old standby, showing up on Election Day.
Well, I always like showing up for Election Day, even though you know, you never know if there's going to be a last-second development. There usually aren't, but there can be. For instance, somebody can disgrace themselves the last week before the election.
Yeah, you know, the one thing about early voting is sometimes by the time you get to Election Day, as you said, things may have changed. But, you know, on the other hand, I think an election like this, I think these positions of candidates and who the candidates are have been really thoroughly vetted by now. And most people know what they're interested in, what the positions of the candidates are. So I think you're going to see, I think statistics are bearing this out, that you're going to see more and more early voting, more and more absentee voting, where that way then people don't have to worry about if the weather's bad on Election Day or if they get tied up at work or something like that where they can't make it.
Well, one of the reasons, and of course I follow it more closely than most people, because I'm writing about it and I'm doing shows about it, is that I want to get the feel of the polling place come Election Day.
Well, that is, you know, quintessential democracy when you walk in there and you've you know, election judges who are your neighbors, and I always enjoyed it for the social gathering. You'd always see people there that you maybe hadn't seen in a while and able to catch up with people, and there were often a good array of donuts and coffee available too.
Well, actually, not so much in my ward, because the you know, the local organization just doesn't do what they used to.
Yeah, well, it's you know, we have to move with the times, and with the technology and the ability in place to do things like early voting and absentee voting, and the schedules that people have where they just don't have as much discretionary time anymore. I think it's important that democracy keep up with the people, and that's why I think, again, that you know, it's been made almost as easy as possible. I think the only easier way for people to vote is if someday we go to some sort of internet voting where they can just sit at their computer and do it.
And of course, that's going to be fraught with problems because of all the computer fraud and all that. I got a note. One thing I've learned is when I get a notice that looks suspicious, which I get daily via email, like Facebook says this or whatever. And by the way, you can Facebook me. Jewish Chicago, by the way, is available on our website. The TV show website for the regular Northtown News Magazine is www.ntnm.org. You can also go to www.aviworld.com to catch the paper. And if you can't get it at the store, you can read it online, and I do urge you to do that. But, you know, and you could Facebook me, which is how I got off on the web tangent. But, you know, Facebook says this. If you click on options and see the view full header, you know, I'm getting this from behind what used to be called the Iron Curtain. And I somehow don't think my Facebook notice would have come from there.
Well, I think we are a long way from secure internet voting. But again, in the interim, it certainly is, it can't be easier than sending in a form saying, send me a ballot, and sitting at your kitchen table and voting that and then putting it in the mail. or stopping in on your way to the grocery store at Warren Park or one of the other facilities where you can do early voting. And the other thing to keep in mind on early voting too, anybody in the city of Chicago can vote at any city facility. So if you're a 50th Ward resident, but you're working, say, in the 45th Ward or something, you could go and vote at that facility just as easily as the one within your ward. Suburban voters cannot vote at city facilities, but again, you could go to the suburban courthouses. It doesn't have to be the early voting site that's located within your village or town. Anywhere in suburban Cook, you can go and cast your early vote if you're a suburban resident, and the same thing in the city of Chicago if you're a Chicago resident, anywhere at one of the early voting sites in Chicago. And that will be open through this week. And it's a good way to do it, to know that you cast your ballot and you're not leaving anything to chance if there's a problem election day.
I think that's great advice, great ideas. You know, right now we're waiting, and things happen on the campaign trail. Joel Pollack is supposed to join us, who's the 9th District. Is he on the air? I'm being waved to from the... okay, no. So, you know what? We haven't gotten a call from him. He probably got caught up on the campaign trail. That's a race I very much want to talk about. So...
well, let's hold off a couple of minutes and maybe...
Okay, you got it. What race would you like to talk about that we haven't touched?
You know, there's not even a candidate race here, but I do want to remind people there's going to be a proposed constitutional amendment on the ballot.
Oh, it's big-time stuff.
And this is a constitutional amendment where it's being proposed that there be a process for the recall of the governor of the state of Illinois. Now, obviously, with everything that has happened over the last several years, people are very concerned and very angry, and a lot of focus has been put on the governor's office. And this is a proposal that's been placed on the ballot that would allow a procedure. It's a rather complicated procedure where voters could put a question on the ballot to recall a governor before his or her term is complete.
Well, personally, my opinion is that the recall procedure isn't necessary if you vote right in the first place. I was trying to yell and warn people like crazy. Well, first of all, before he was elected in the first place, and when he was up for re-election again later on, that Rod Blagojevich was absolutely positively so bad it couldn't even be expressed. You talk about bad politicians or negative this or negative that. People are starting to get the idea about what this guy was about, and I still don't think they fully get it.
Well, everything that's come out about his administration and his conduct, we have to keep in perspective, though. This is one person, one governor. What concerns me is creating a process based on one bad experience that is going to reflect, you know, from the rest of the history of the state potentially. I'm concerned about a recall. I'm going to personally vote no on this. And the reason is, first of all, I think we have recalls. They're called elections.
Right.
Every 4 years, if you're not happy with the performance of an office holder, you can vote them out. And secondly, I think you have to look at it from a matter of policy, too. You know, there are going to be governors that will be elected that will have to make hard choices and maybe unpopular choices. And if they're always looking over their shoulder to say, this is the right thing to do for the state, but I'm afraid that if I do this, I'm going to incur the wrath of the voters and I'm going to be pulled out of office because I made a tough, hard, but correct choice. You're going to have some of the continued gridlock that we already see, and the lack of initiative and the lack of leadership in terms of taking on hard issues. So I understand that in the particular segment of time we find ourselves in, that people are very upset with the conduct of the past governor and the trial and all that, but do you really want to change the system because of one instance of that happening, and create what I think would create instability in government, and also encourage people not to take tough stands when they need to be taken?
Oh, I not only fully agree, it's typical, unfortunately, of politicians to want to do knee-jerk reaction things to things that just happened, and then try to fix, 10 years later, somebody's going to figure this was stupid. The fact is, do your homework in the first place. The energy that it would take to get somebody out of office isn't worth the effort at all. I mean, first of all, you're talking halfway through. By the time you get something going, it's going to be too late. Forget it. Put the energy into doing something positive and vote correctly in the first place. Do your homework, vote correctly. You know what? Apparently, we're not going to hear from Joel Pollak. I do want to talk about him a little bit. Excuse me. You know, it's a shame because I know he was very excited, and we were communicating last night about the time and all the rest. But when you're on the campaign trail, unfortunately, things can happen. There is an enthusiasm in the 9th Congressional District, which is, you know, it's along the lakefront, Rogers Park, West Rogers Park, out west a bit. There's a real enthusiasm about Joel Pollak's candidacy. Ordinarily, this is the kind of enthusiasm you see about Democratic candidates. And I'm seeing these little old ladies who probably were there for Adlai Stevenson, you know, the third, and for Paul Simon, and they're out there for Joel Pollak right now. Because unfortunately, among the Jewish community, you know, Jan Schakowsky is not doing the job for Israel, for the community. She's not even, and for the general community, she's not bringing any money into the district for her pet causes. But we're not seeing the kind of things that, let's say, somebody like Rastenkowski, okay, a higher level, but she's been in Congress 12 years. What has she brought into the district? What is she doing for the district? She is basically, she's never met a tax bill she didn't like. You know, she is as far left as anybody going. She is so behind Obama in every way, shape, or form, while the rest of the country is recognizing that things are going wrong. Even people that are Democratic, you know, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable what's been going on, and she's ignoring everything with Israel, the whole rest of it. In my community, you see Pollak signs all over the place. People are really tired of Jan Schakowsky, not to mention other things she's done. You know, there's actually a tangible chance. There's a growing movement. His numbers in the polls are picking up. He's got a real shot at this.
Well, he appears to be a very well-educated person, and I know he's a Harvard graduate, and I think sometimes you see that.
Well, actually, he graduated magna cum laude from Harvard.
Even better. But you know, it's certainly interesting, you know, for someone like him to take on an incumbent who has been, you know, reelected by large margins, and he obviously must feel and sense something out there.
Now, in any event, we've got we're under a minute now. I want to thank Jim Nally, my co-host. Jim, thank you so much for being here today. I want to thank Sonny Hersh. This is his production. Happy birthday to Jamie. Sonny set up these great graphics. I want to thank Keith McDonald. I want to urge everybody to vote. Vote early, vote often, vote once, vote twice. Pick up Jewish Chicago, www.ntnm.org. A lot of it's already gone off the stand, so go to www.ntnm.org. You can check it there. You can also go to www.aviworld.com and check it out over there. You know, I think we had a real good lineup today. We had Republicans, Democrats, Independents. I want to thank Commissioner Joe Berios, gubernatorial candidate Scott Lee Cohen, Commissioner Larry Suffredin, Water Reclamation District Commissioner Mariyan Spyropoulos, and last words, Jim.
Well, again, hopefully this has been educational for people to learn a little bit more about these candidates, and make sure you get out and vote.
Vote early, vote often. You can still vote early, and that's legal. Otherwise, November 2nd, go to the polling place. And of course, we hope to be here again for the mayoral election. And I want to thank everybody for watching. And check us out on the Northtown News Magazine on CAN TV 19. And thanks to everybody at CAN TV.